Hello everyone, how are you? Chris here, Teeling's European Brand Ambassador. I'm absolutely delighted to be joining you today with iconic offices as I take you through how to make the Teeling's Whiskey Sour. This is of course part of their online virtual events that are available to pretty much anybody, members, non-members alike, and you can tune in here today, follow me along as I make the Whiskey Sour. Of course, if you have absolutely any questions, feel free to leave me a comment below and either myself or someone from Teeling Whiskey, someone from iconic offices will get back to you with any of your questions or comments. To give you an insight into Teeling Whiskey, before we jump into the drink, of course Teeling Whiskey is the first new distillery in Dublin in 125 years. The last fully functional distillery in Dublin was way back in the 1970s, in 1976. And since we've opened, there's now a lot of new distilleries that are opening up in Dublin City, which is fantastic. And I'd highly recommend, when this is all over, to go out and visit them. So at the moment, 4 fully functional distilleries. Of course, we're a family-owned, independent distillery based right in the city centre, so in a very small area called the Liberties, which originally was a kind of the epicenter of Irish whiskey in terms of production. Originally housed, believe it or not, 32 of a total 37 fully functional distilleries in this area. Of course, everything that we're about, you can see, is all embodied through our logo, the Phoenix. This is, of course, a symbol of rebirth, renewal or renaissance, really embodying the resilience of the Irish whiskey category, but also kind of symbolising creating something new, something different, that I believe is very much resonating with a modern audience or a modern whiskey consumer. Now, the ingredients that you're going to need for this drink, for the whiskey sour, are some Teeling small batch. Now, this is our flagship whiskey, so this is available in 65 markets all around the world. It's what's called a premium blended whiskey. So blended whiskey is essentially where you have 3 parts of corn and 1 part barley in this particular blend. So it's usually a combination of 2 different cereals, or 75%, 25%. It spends up to 6 years in ex-American bourbon barrels. So that's quite typical of Irish whiskey. You know, blended whiskey is one of the biggest categories at the moment, where this goes in a different avenue from most Irish whiskey. First of all, 46%. So usually Irish whiskey would be about 40, 41, 42. 46%, you're going to get a much bolder mouthfeel, and it's going to stand up incredibly well in mixed drinks. So you can have it either neat or you can use it in a whiskey sour. The last thing is how it's matured. So after it spends 6 years in American bourbon barrels, we transfer this over into rum casks, which is very atypical for an Irish whiskey. The rum influence brings you, of course, onto a beach. You get all those tropical flavours, the dates, the figs, the rum raisin, that really does kind of add a level of complexity in the drink. So that's your first ingredient you're going to need, some Teeling small batch. Second ingredients that you're going to need are some lemon juice, so some fresh citrus. If you don't have lemon juice, you can absolutely use anything from lime to grapefruit juice to whatever you have in your fridge or in your cabinets at home. Of course, you're going to need some egg whites and you're going to need some sugar syrup. So to create sugar syrup, it's 1 part of granulated sugar and 1 part of hot water. So you can absolutely use the kettle to prepare this. Put it in a pot, stir it around for about 15 minutes at medium heat. And then that's ready to go. You can keep it in your fridge almost indefinitely, and you can use it to make as many whiskey sours as you like. Of course, in terms of the equipment that you'll need to make this drink, you're going to need a shaker. So this is a shaken drink. Anything with citrus or pulp or dairy products, you're going to need those to emulsify, and as a result you have to shake them as opposed to stirring. Shaking and stirring, the biggest difference between the two is the levels of oxygen and the levels of dilution. So you can see inside my DIY shakers, I've got a couple of options. You've got a reusable coffee cup. You've got, let's say, a water bottle if you have this at home, or if not, even a protein shaker. You can put them to good use. So I'm going to be using the coffee cup. If you open this up, as you'll see, there's going to be less oxygen when this is closed off as opposed to if this is open. So with a stirred drink, generally you'll have an open container, you'll be stirring it with some sort of spoon. There's going to be different levels of oxygen, different levels of dilution in comparison to if you're shaking. And that's the biggest thing that's going to affect the flavour, particularly the mouthfeel. With the stirred drink, you'll get more of a silky, more of a velvety mouthfeel, where depending on your ingredients, if you're shaking, you're usually going to have a little bit more dilution, and it's not going to have that same sort of thickness, but it will have that absolutely great level of dilution, which will make it very accessible. So that's everything that you need. As I said, those 4 ingredients and a shaker of some description. Now, in terms of the measurements, you're going to need 2 parts of Teeling small batch, 1 part of fresh citrus, half a part of sugar syrup, and half a part of fresh egg whites. So that's the ratios for each of the ingredients. If you want to break that down to mils, we're talking 60 mils, 30 mils, 15 mils, and 15 mils. Now I'd recommend if you use some sort of measurement, of course, to pour these out. So what I'm going to be using here today is some spoons that I found here in my kitchen. Have a root around, see what you can find. I guarantee you'll find something that will help you in making this drink. So with this one here, I've got one that is 1 part, the other side which is 1.5 parts. So this is actually perfect for what I need. Making the drink itself, the first thing that you'll need to do, of course, is icing your glass. So by doing this, it's going to make it a lot more refreshing. Of course, we'll be dumping this out at the very end and adding in some fresh ice. But that's the very, very first thing that you'll do. After that, we literally go all in the ingredients straight into your shaker. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding in 6 parts of Teeling small batch. So you can literally measure it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that's it, good to go. Of course, as I said, 46% non-chill filtered. That's really going to get the structure or the backbone to this drink. Now after that, we're going to add in our fresh citrus. So with this, you can juice it out in advance. If you want, you can use a carton. The best thing I would say though, however, is some fresh citrus. Really does work well in this drink. So for this is going to be 1 part, which is 30 mils in total. Or the measurements I have here, it's going to be 3 pours. So 1, 2, and 3. And that's ready to go. We then have some simple syrup. So 1 part. And with the egg white, if you want, and you're afraid that you might get some of the yolk in the drink, or if you get a little bit of the shells, what you can always do, if you grab a glass of some description, of course you can do it on the side before putting it into the drink. So you literally just need to crack the egg, like so, break it apart, and you can sieve it from one hand to the other. So you can see there, I've taken out the majority of the egg white. I'm going to save that for later. And I'm just going to be using the egg whites. Now this you can literally pour it straight all the way on in. Usually when you crack an egg, you're going to get roughly between about 15 to 20 mils in total. So this is going to be absolutely perfect for the amount that we need. Very last thing, of course, is going to be some ice in your shaker. So ready to go. Make sure your top is sealed on, that it's nice and tight. Otherwise, you're going to have a load of egg white covering all you. It's a good thing I have the apron here today, so make sure that it is fully sealed. And you're going to be shaking it up for roughly about 10 to 12 seconds before you pour it into your glass. So the most important thing when you're shaking is make sure the ice goes from the top to the bottom, like so. And that way you'll have the right level of dilution, as opposed to shaking it and you can see it fits all in the middle here. Make sure you get top to bottom. So as I said, roughly about 10 to 12 seconds. Now usually, if you have it beside your ear, you're going to hear when this is ready to go. Great workout, as you can see. And the great thing about using a coffee cup is a lot of times you're going to have a filter at the top and you can literally just dump it straight into your glass. As I said, we're going to be pouring this neat, as in not over ice, but if you like, you can pour this over ice. It's entirely up to yourself. You will get a little bit more of that frothy mouthfeel if you don't have the inclusion of ice. So we'll literally pour this straight into our glass. As you can see, it takes out all of the ice. And of course, if I want to use something like a sieve to strain out any of those finer particles, I can absolutely do so. You can use something like what you have at home, or even a cheesecloth. Can work absolutely perfectly well. The very last thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to let this sit for a couple of minutes so that the head settles. Now, sour style cocktails, to finish up, they're basically broken down into 2 different categories, into simple sours and into complex sours. So if we were to make this into a complex sour, you basically add on the addition of things like fortified wine or liqueurs, Likewise, you can absolutely substitute out those sugars. So if you're using simple syrup or sugar syrup, you can change that to honey syrup or maple syrup or agave syrup and see how you get on with that. But that's it there in a nutshell. That is our Teeling's Whiskey Sour. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'd love to see how you get on with the drink. So if you want to tag Teeling Whiskey and of course Iconic Offices and let us know how you get on. Cheers everybody, all the best. Sláinte.